Hello everyone and welcome back to another Exo Heroes video. Today is going to be part 2 of our Season 2 Fated Hero tier list. It's sort of a revamp from our Season 1 version, and what we're going to do today is cover the backline heroes, and that's going to be Fated Attackers and Fated Chaos Heroes. So you guys already know how the grading criteria works from S rank to F rank. Luckily there's nobody F rank in our list today, but if you guys are confused, we'll put it up on the screen here for you guys to look at. And without further ado, why don't we get started at the bottom of our list, and that's going to be Sabrina and Baelish.
Yeah, so for Sabrina and Baelish, I think these two heroes are what we consider as C-tier heroes. So those are not bad heroes, but they're definitely below average in comparison to everyone else. With Sabrina, we really think there are just so many other heroes that functions in a similar manner as Sabrina, this kind of AoE DPS hero, and in our opinion, Sabrina just doesn't bring too much, right? Later on, we'll see heroes like Maggie, who brings a little bit more utility, and obviously at the top of our list, we'll see heroes like Rira, Bathory show up, and those are just better alternatives in our opinion than Sabrina. If you have her, she can definitely, for any of you who are new, carry you through the early to mid game story quests and things like that, but probably not on the same level as some of the heroes we'll see later on. Baelish is kind of similar. In our opinion, we actually quite like Baelish, especially in a lot of the PvE areas, story quests specifically, where you need someone to break those Guardian Stones, and his AoE dot damage does really well in that specific aspect of the game. However, everywhere else we feel like it's just not quite there. It doesn't quite bring any sort of utility beyond the AoE dot damage, and obviously in PvP situations we really don't think the dot damage has a lot of use cases there. Especially if you think about against first Guardian heroes, you don't want that. And now with the introduction of Dorka, who has consistent healing, pretty much offsets the benefit that you get from the dot damage. So overall, Baelish, Sabrina, below average in our opinion. But with that being said, let's move on to our B tier, and this is going to be quite a big chunk of heroes. So we'll break them into kind of the mages and assassins. So I'll let Edward to talk a little bit more about that.
Right, so we're going to start off with the bottom of the B rank with a couple of mages, and from bottom to top, it's going to be Kylock, Maggie, Bernadette, and Jennai. And I mean, we just finished talking about Baelish, right? He's a dot hero, darkness, good at breaking Guardian Stones, specifically for stuff like Holy Dragon Grounds on darkness days. But outside of, some certain PvP elements, we don't think that he has that big of a place specifically in PvP. So that's why he's low on the list, and Kylock is no different. Even though he's not entirely dot dependent in his kit, it's really mostly about his A2, and his A1 just, does some chunky damage, nothing special there. The only thing that Kylock has going for him is his synergy with Dorka, and that's going to be Absorb Soul, which allows him to heal for 100% of the damage done on any dot on all enemies, which, I mean, I don't have to get into the details of it, that is some ridiculous healing. But it's only if you have Dorka, and it's only if you have a relatively dot-heavy team, which, as we've discussed earlier, might not be the best idea in most types of content. So that's why Kylock kind of sits at the bottom here. We just think that the dots, it's not their meta right now. With so many heroes focused on speed and bursting you down in the first couple of turns, dot heroes just won't really have the opportunity to shine. Maggie, on the other hand, is a lot more impactful immediately. She has a lot of damage, she has mana utilization for some extra scaling, and she has AoE. So we think that she's a little bit more useful in PvE content in that she'll just do a lot of damage consistently, and with her First Guardian Fate Core, she could have a spot in PvP as well if you don't have some of the better First Guardian heroes like Xeon or Rira. Bernadette we have above Maggie and also at B rank for a very specific reason. While she's a very accessible hero and a lot of players will have her even early on in their careers, she has pretty decent damage. Her A1, I believe, is 300% single target damage, and her A2 is a pretty chunky AoE attack as well. So she's got a nice mix here. The most important thing that we want to bring out is with the introduction of the Summer Festa heroes and thus Summer's Blessing, which gives Frost immunity for one turn, and if you pop it, it gives everybody a massive attack buff. This obviously invalidates a lot of Frost heroes, but with Bernadette, what you could do with her relatively low mana cost AoE A2 is, since she's a Frost hero, you can have her go first, proc the Summer's Blessing passive, and then come in with your real Frost attacker, like let's say Bathory, who we'll find higher up on this list, to do the real damage. So Bernadette, decent in PvE, has a very, very niche role in PvP. We don't expect to see her used like that often, but the potential is there. And speaking of potential, we're going to move on to Jennai. Obviously, she is a general, which means that she's just going to be higher value. She also has, as some data miners have collected, a Fate Core coming up, and she's going to be a gold rank Fate Core, and those are always good. So we're very excited to see what kind of potential she has when that Fate Core comes out, and that's why we have her higher up on the list. We think that she's on the up and up, and we predict that she might be even moving up higher on this list, depending on how that Fate Core goes. So we're all looking forward to that, and when it comes out, we will of course be putting out a video to keep you guys up to date on the latest developments. Now, the other 3 heroes in B rank are going to be, as Hal mentioned earlier, the assassins, and I'm going to let him take care of those.
Alright, so yeah, the next 3 are all assassins, and there's just a razor thin margin that's separating these 3. Baraka, we put him at the bottom of the 3, where we think Rachel and Jin definitely outshines him just by a little bit. So let's start by looking at Baraka first. He is obviously a very solid hero, as we all know. Pretty good mana efficiency in terms of his skills, has the kill reset on his A1, and a very solid DPS skill on his A2. And more importantly, if you do pair him up with Rachel, then he can serve as quite a consistent mana generating hero for your team as well. So in our opinion, pretty good, brings a decent amount of damage as well as some utility when paired with Rachel. On the other hand, we have Rachel and Jane, and the reason why we put those 2 a little bit higher than Baraka is because of, in our opinion, they just have a little bit higher ceiling than Baraka. So if we look at Rachel here, specifically when it comes to his Fate Core, right? His Fate Core has the ability to allow him to get into the Awakening state, which increases further his damage potential by boosting his critical hit, as well as giving him additional attack speed and damage immunity for a few turns. So that's really good to have. And Rachel's A2 also is a really strong skill as well. When you do get a kill on this A2, you're able to grant additional attack and attack speed to your entire team. So overall, this is a very solid kit for him. And in our opinion, when we're looking at just the true potential, right, like the absolute highest ceiling, I think Rachel is definitely a little bit higher than Baraka. It's a similar story with Jane as well. The base Jane is not too different from base Baraka, but we do think that his Fate Core definitely offers a little bit more value. We really like the Heartstrike passive coming from the Banga Fate Core line, as it is something that we think is really unique and really interesting and provides a lot of diversity to the game. And on top of that, it's just a strong passive. It does take a while to set up, as you need to proc it several times to level it up, but when you do level it up to level 3, it does consistent damage to everyone. It decreases the defense of your target by 1,000 and lowers their attack speed. It's a really strong passive when you have the right setup to utilize the skill to its true potential. But as we mentioned before, it is something that takes time to set up. So, while on paper it looks good, we highly recommend you to have several Banga family Fate Cores together if you do want to utilize Heartstrike to its true potential. But that's our take on the 3 assassins here. In our opinion, all of them are pretty good, but compared to our A tier and S tiers, which we will talk about in just a little bit, they just feel like a little bit lackluster in terms of how consistent they can be when it comes to doing damage. So I'm going to shift over back to Edward to talk about our A tier heroes, Raleigh and Valentina.
Alright, so starting with the A rank heroes, there's 2, Rudley and Valentina. We're going to do Rudley first because he's a little bit lower on the list. And as you guys might know, base Rudley is widely known for his nuking potential, right? Even his A1 has, I believe, over 500% scaling, and I mean, that's kind of unheard of for an A1. His A2, I believe, caps at 750%, which is really, really high given that he is an attack hero and already has high base attack. So base Rudley is definitely somebody to be on the lookout for if you're looking to just get that initial burst and wipe out one target. But it doesn't end there. Rudley also has a Fate Core, which in my opinion is so much better than his base kit, and also like it almost pushes him into the S tier. But let's take a look at why that is. So as is with base Rudley, he does have the command passive. His A1 though has significant changes, and this deals 100% damage to one enemy, but it silences them for 5 turns, and after those 5 turns, afflicts the target with a debuff that inflicts damage equal to 100% of his own current health at the end of the turn. And also comes with Vanguard, which grants a barrier with 29% of his own maximum health for 10 turns. So this is a little bit of a really watered down version of FC Diva's A2, I guess, in the sense that there's initial attack and then like a little bit of follow-up damage at the end. His A2 is where things start to get really interesting. Deals 255% damage to all enemies, and when the attack hits, it increases the health of all allies by 22% of his own maximum health, and the defense of all allies by 21% of his own defense, and comes with the Vanguard barrier for 73% of his own max health for 13 turns. It's 4 mana, which is pricey, but when you consider this does 255 damage to all enemies, which is a respectable amount on its own, and then all the additional utility, defensive utility that you get on top of that, this is really a game changer. And with the burst modifier, it could be even stronger once you 6-star him. So overall, Rudley just has a lot of potential, both his base kit and his FC, as they serve widely different functions, but we think that versatility is part of what makes him so strong. Now, moving on to our other A rank, and that's Valentina. Now, if you've watched our previous Chaos Hero ranking for Exo Heroes Season 1, you'll remember that Valentina was actually kind of low on the list and she was a B rank. So what changed to push her up to A and make her even better than Rudley? Well, with her base kit, essentially nothing. She's basically exactly the same. I would say the only change there would maybe be the fact that Shufraken has come into the meta, which does obviously bring her, having the leader skill synergy with him, a little bit stronger. But what really set her up for success in Season 2 was the introduction of her Gold Summerfesta Fate Core. And this was ridiculous. While she comes with the basic Summerfesta passives and doesn't have anything additional like FC Iris did, she gets additional effects on her skills, and those tie into her leader skills with Shufraken. So instead of just mana burning 10 mana, which was significant and it was effective before, now she also afflicts targets with Bind for 7 turns, and it can't be removed. And so Bind prevents you from gaining mana. So essentially, she'll attack you, burn all of your mana, and then prevent you from gaining mana for 7 turns. And then the Bind affects all enemies, even if you only attack one enemy. So this is actually quite significant, as if you land the Bind while early on in the fight and they haven't had a chance to gain much mana, then you essentially lock them out of using skills, and that's pretty ridiculous. This is something that's available on both of her actives, so there's an AoE and a single target version for less mana. And we think that this alone makes her A rank, along with the fact that now Shufraken, FC Shufraken are just dominating the meta. You'll definitely be seeing this combo a lot more in the coming weeks. That does it for our A rank heroes. Now, as we move into the S rank, we have a lot to say about these 3. It's going to be Bathory, Dorka, and our favorite, Rira. So I'll let Hao take care of that.
Yeah, so starting out with Bathory. This is perhaps maybe the more controversial one, because we used to have Bathory as our number 1 on the Season 1 tier list, right? We thought she was just amazing. There's nothing that you can go wrong with Bathory, but now we're not quite sure about that anymore. Obviously, Bathory still comes with a Tranquil passive, and in our opinion, the Tranquil passive just provides a tremendous amount of utility to your team. The ability to avoid death one time, especially in PvP situations, is still something that you should definitely consider whenever you have the opportunity, because it does offer a lot of outplay potential. However, on the other hand, the rest of her kit definitely have gotten nerfed several times now. First of all, the newly introduced Summerfesta passive essentially negates a lot of the frost damage, and obviously as a frost hero who has 2 AoE skills, that really limits Bathory's ability to deal damage during a fight, especially in PvP situations. You really don't want to use any of her skills because what you end up doing is proccing the Summer's Blessing passive of the opponent's team and giving them a free attack boost, and that's not what we want. So her PvP viability in terms of doing damage, in our opinion, has been tuned down quite a bit. And we haven't even mentioned Dorka, who also offsets any magic damage by 30%, so that's another hit to her damage. But PvP aside, her ability to do damage, chunky damage, in PvE situations, in our opinion, is still quite valuable. Especially for those of you who needs to clear the story, definitely give Bathory a consideration because her ability to do AoE damage alongside of her burst ability on her A2 definitely puts her at the top when it comes to AoE damage dealer. So overall, all said and done, we still think Bathory is in that S tier ranking, but she probably lost her Queen of Exos Heroes title to some of the other heroes. And now let's move on to our top 1 and 2, and frankly at this point, we're not entirely sure who deserves the number 1 ranking. We do still think Rira might be the Queen of Exos Hero at this point, but Dorka is definitely a contender for the title. So let's take a look at Dorka first. In our opinion, Dorka might be the new Bathory in a way. That she is not necessarily a super strong standalone hero, but she brings a lot of utility to your team that sets you up for success. So similar to Bathory's Tranquil passive, Dorka now introduces a new passive to the game called Soulbound. And what he does is it essentially gives everyone who has lower attack than her the ability to heal 30% of their missing health per turn. And this is really strong, especially if you're running a team that is frontline heavy, that has a lot of defenders that are tanky. It means everyone on your team will probably have lower attack than Dorka, and therefore be able to benefit from this healing. And this is so consistent in our opinion that it essentially dwarfs all of the conventional healers out there. One thing we do want to point out is certain heroes, for example Bathory and Rira, have higher attack than Dorka and therefore might not benefit from this unless you min-max their gears a little bit so that Dorka has a little bit more attack than the other heroes. But overall, we still think it's a pretty strong passive. Meanwhile, as if that is not strong enough, she also decreases all magic damage by 30%. And there is no condition to that. It just happens consistently as long as Dorka's in the game. And in our opinion, that's just so strong. It invalidates essentially all the magic damage dealer out there. With the exception of maybe someone as crazy as, a single target damage dealer like Diva, just about everyone else is going to take a significant haircut on their overall damage. And in our opinion, this is a crazy passive. I don't know how else to describe it other than overpowered. And that's not all. Dorka also has this new mana generating ability called Grace of Mana. And this is essentially a combination of flow and breath of mana together. It grants 1 permanent mana to everybody on your team. And I mean, who doesn't want 1 permanent mana forever, right? So that is just another really strong passive. And all of that are just Dorka's passive. We haven't even got to her skills yet. Well, her skills, on the other hand, are not necessarily mind-blowing, but it's good, right? It just does consistent damage. Her A1 does AoE dot damage, which is great for breaking Guardian Stones, things like that. And he has a single target piercing damage on her A2 that does respectable damage that allow you to finish someone off if you do have someone like Rira to do the initial AoE damage. So a very solid kit coupled with an insane amount of utility coming from her passive, putting her as an S tier and number 2 on our list, and potentially moving into number 1 at some point. But right now, we still have Rira as our number 1. And I've just talked for a long time, so I'm gonna shift it back to Edward to finish this tier list up.
Alright, so just in case we've got some new people to the game that don't know what Rira does, let's do a really quick run through of base Rira, who, by the way, we don't think is that fantastic. Like, base Rira, in my opinion, is definitely worse than Dorka and Bathory. It's the FC that just is absolutely insane, but we'll get to that after this. So, her A1 is Verdant Fire, it's 2 mana, deals single target damage, a decent amount, but it comes with a poison dot, and has a little bit of synergy with Bathory, with the Tranquil Leader skill where she does a additional 50% damage. And then there's the A2, which is 5 mana, does around 250% damage, but it's piercing, and also has the 50% additional damage with the Tranquil synergy. So, I mean, you read that and you're like, okay, you know, like they're kind of expensive, decent damage, she's got a dodge, she's got piercing, it's fine, right? She's a typical Chaos hero, that's really all there is to it. But, man, her Fate Core, so let's get right into it. So, before we even talk about her skills, she is a First Guardian, which says enough as it is. With the Dragon Blood passive, it makes it so difficult to hit her and get away with it. Not only does she get a barrier, she grants everybody else in her row a barrier and a counter. So that's really dumb. But in addition to that, she also has the Guardian Star passive, which I believe she's the only First Guardian with that. And what this does is it increases her attack speed by 32 and her accuracy by 100 when the battle begins. And then this buff does get taken away when she's below 5% HP, which would essentially mean she's going to die soon. But she won't, because if she's in a team with Bathory, not only does Tranquil kick in to stop her from dying, but Tranquil Mark is consumed and returns her back to 100% HP, meaning you have to kill FC Rira twice if she's with Bathory. And the first life, she gets huge stat buffs. So that's just like as if First Guardians weren't strong enough as it is. Then you look at her skills. Starlight Showers, 1 mana, 300% damage to one enemy, reduces their accuracy and evasion by 100, and grants herself status effect immunity for 12 turns, and has the Bite synergy with Bathory. Her A2 does 124% piercing damage, so it's a little less damage, but it's also 3 mana, so it's less mana than her base A2, and this also reduces the accuracy and evasion of the target with the highest attack by 100, and comes with the Bite synergy again. So overall, this is such an overloaded kit, and it's not even overloaded with things that don't matter. Like everything they've added onto her makes her significantly stronger. And so that's why we've seen FC Rira just dominate the meta, especially because now you have heroes that support her, such as FC Annie, who gives crit, who gives mana, and Bathory, who obviously gives her the extra life, and everybody else on the team Tranquil. And, I mean, just along with the Dragon Blood passive, she is absolutely ridiculous when paired with those core heroes. And honestly, we expect the sort of speed bursty meta to continue for the foreseeable future. We have put a lot of thought into it. We might be releasing a video soon talking about some meta comp predictions and where we see the PvP ladder going in terms of team comps. But right now, our immediate thought is Rira's just going to keep dominating until someone else comes up. And that's why she retains the #1 spot on our list here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Rira, in our opinion, she just thrives in every situation, right? She has an insane amount of utility that all supports her crazy amount of damage. And in our opinion, yeah, like you said, we're just happy that we have her. We got her pretty early on in the game, and she has never been excluded from our lineup. And, you know, whether it's PvP or PvE, there are just plenty of use cases for Rira. But as we always say, you know, this is just our tier list. I'm sure some of you out there might disagree. Feel free to let us know what you think. Feel free to let us know if we missed out on anything or understated any hero that you think are really good. Leave them in the comment section and let's start a discussion there. But with that being said, we'll be doing more Season 2 related tier list, ranking, guides, and stuff like that. So keep an eye out for those. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next episode very soon.
Peace.